Hi everyone. I wanted to touch base with you. We've had a hurricane since I have updated you last, and I wanted to make sure that I was just checking in to make sure you've seen updated due dates, talk with you a little bit about the first major assignment, talk about everybody's thinking so far. You've been doing an excellent job on your readings and your discussion posts and your entry tickets. So I know you're getting the content really well. So I want to talk about a couple things here before we talk about some major assignments. The first one is kind of how we're organizing this course. So some of you have all of you have been doing a really good job on those entry tickets and discussion posts. So I think you're starting to get the hang of it, but I just want to give you a little lecture to help clarify some ideas. And so how we're thinking about the methods of social studies is that we're thinking about our own identities as teachers, and that's why you're having some questions about your own identities and your background experiences. And then we're thinking about what compelling questions do citizens in a democracy need to grapple with in order to better the world, to change the world for the better. And so that's how this course is kind of framed. Now we're starting to the point of the course where we are starting to think about these individual social science disciplines. And so you just had a reading about historical thinking and what are the skills of historical thinking and what are the benefits of students being able to use those skills and how do we do that. So next we'll move to geography and then economics, civics, behavioral sciences, etc. But we're still always thinking about these things under this big umbrella of inquiry and inquiry for democracy. And I just realized that there's a typo in that I need to get fixed. Keep thinking about when we're reading these and we're talking about historical thinking or geographic thinking or economic thinking, that we're always doing so through the lens of what do citizens need to think about? What big questions in our world do citizens and future citizens need to think about? And also you've been doing some reading where you're thinking about these things being in between a revised narrative and a master narrative. So within history, the Takaki reading, for example, that you read, it talks about the master narrative of history versus a more revised or critical narrative of history. So when we come up with compelling questions for citizens and democracy, we need to decide where we're fitting in that continuum of a master narrative versus revised narrative. So you guys are doing a great job so far. If we look at the C3, which is the standards framework that you read at the beginning of the semester, this way of thinking about the methods of social studies fit in very well with the C3. So in the C3, the first step of that process is developing questions of inquiry and then applying disciplinary tools and concepts, evaluating sources and using evidence, and then taking informed action and deciding what we're going to do with that new information. So this is a very much a constructivist process. So if you think back to your learning theory class, this is a process this is assuming a learning theory of constructivism, not necessarily behaviorism. So it's assuming that students already have some background information, that they have experiences and knowledge that are worthy and we should validate. And we should develop questions and plan inquiries with them in mind of what they already know or maybe some misconceptions that they have. And then they are going to be the ones who are using rich resources, and you're providing them with rich experiences so they can construct answers to those questions. So you're not giving them the answers, they are constructing answers to those questions, and you're there to guide them to make sure that they're not constructing false answers or they're not developing misconceptions as a result of this. In the Blackboard course, I'm going to put a folder in there, and what that along with a PowerPoint slide. And what that folder is, it's like a mini C3. So in my course here on campus, we did a mini C3 about the Confederate statues. Should the Confederate statues remain in places of prominence? And so if we go up here, we developed questions around that, like what are some things we would want to know in order to be able to answer that question. And then we applied these different thinking skills and different resources from these different subject areas in order to answer our questions. We looked at resources and we tried to develop some claims using them, and then we communicated our ideas. What were we thinking now about that question of Confederate statues? So I'm going to put that folder into the Blackboard site. It's going to be optional for you to look through. The readings that are in there are readings that we're going to do at other points in the semester, but really it was kind of almost like a little simulated C3 activity that we did in the course to kind of get you the feel for what does this look like, what does it feel like, rather than just reading about it in the framework. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk about is the schedule. So let me get that up on my computer quick. Just take me a second. I think things load a little slower when I already have the recording going. I hope everybody has stayed dry throughout the hurricane. I was thinking about you all. In Raleigh, we didn't get very much at all, but I was a nervous wreck the whole time, and I could not get away from the TV. Being my first hurricane experience, it was pretty nerve-wracking. All right. Okay, so for the course schedule, because we had that hurricane, you might have been wondering why I didn't hear too much from me, that you probably, maybe most of you could have been working during that time that the university was closed. But when the university goes into closure like that due to weather related, we're actually not supposed to have you do any work for distance ed courses either. So just because we don't know how you're impacted. And so that's why I wasn't continuing on with our semester until the university opened back up again. So what I've done with this course schedule is, instead of losing the whole week like we did, I tried to get us to only lose 5 days. And so what I've done here is, instead of having the week start on Monday, I've had the week start on Wednesday until we get to fall break, and then we'll kind of regroup a little bit. And so there are new due dates for everything, including the content paper and presentation, which was supposed to be due in like next week, but I've moved that down because I definitely wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that before you started it. So one person already has it in, which is amazing, since I didn't give the directions. Didn't give the directions yet, but it's great. I love people who are trying to work ahead and keep themselves organized. All right, so let's talk about that assignment. Your first major assignment in the course is the content paper, and I'm calling it an inquiry for teaching. And so what this is you're taking the topic that your practicum teacher has given you that you will be teaching the end of October and into November. And so maybe that teacher said, hey, during that time, I'm going to be working on the Civil War, or I'm going to be covering Mesopotamia. Whatever the teacher said is going to be the topic during that time, what we are going to do is develop a mini inquiry unit that fits inside of that topic. Hi, I'm recording. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I really appreciate it. I couldn't figure it out. It's something with PDFs maybe from my thing, since I got Adobe, but I'll figure it out. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. What's that?
My partner was not happy about it.
Okay.
I had to like choose the paper size, and it was like.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right, I'm really sorry about that. I got interrupted, and rather than re-record, I'm just going to keep going here. So the next thing I want to talk about is your assignment that is going to be due, your first major assignment, which is your content paper. I'm calling it the inquiry for teaching, because what you're doing is you're doing your own inquiry in order to build your background knowledge so that you can plan really great curriculum for your students. So your teacher has hopefully given you a topic that says what she's going to be covering during the month of November. And then we are going to plan a unit that fits inside that, because you're only there once a week, so you can't cover the whole unit for the teacher. But what we can do is if that teacher says, we're doing the Civil War, you can make a mini inquiry that fits inside about the Civil War. And so what we need to do is we need to develop your background knowledge through your own inquiry, so you can explore and learn and get the best background knowledge you can in order to be able to develop that curriculum unit later on. So if you go into Blackboard and you go to Assignments, and you go into the folder that says Inquiry for Teaching Social Studies Content Paper. We're going to click on that. And right here, there's a link, and you have to copy and paste it because the link didn't show up, to a Google Doc. And what this is it is a template for how you're going to complete this assignment. So because we're always thinking about social studies through that framework of identity, how our identity is approaching us, what lens we're bringing to the classroom, because we need to be really cognizant of that, because if we're only bringing this certain narrow lens, we need to think about what other lenses do we have to include in this. So we're always going to start with our identity, who we are, what we already know about this topic, what might be missing from our previous understanding of the topic. And so you're going to write a couple paragraphs about your own social identities and educational experiences. So social identities are categories that society has created and that we either ascribe to ourselves or ascribe to us. You could start with race, class, gender, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And then your educational experiences. I want to know, where did you go to school? What was the context like? Was it a diverse school? What did you learn about in social studies? And you have to do this really concisely in just a couple paragraphs. Then the next step is you're going to write a couple paragraphs about your topic. What do you already know about your topic? If it's the Civil War, if it's Mesopotamia, when and where did you learn those things? And importantly, how does your identity impact your understanding of the topic? So I was raised in Wisconsin. My identity as a Northerner definitely impacts how I was taught about the Civil War. So you need to really unpack how could your identity affect what your current understanding of that topic is. And then at the last step of this first step is that you're going to develop 5 inquiry questions for yourself that relate to your topic. So you've already talked about what you already think you know, but you're also thinking about, what don't I know? What new perspectives should I be thinking about? And you're going to develop 5 questions for yourself that you are then going to research. So your questions need to be kind of intellectually meaty. They need to be something that people can really dig into, that you can dig into. They shouldn't just be yes or no questions or fact-based questions. They should be questions you could write a few paragraphs answering. All right, so that's step 1. Then step 2 is you are going to think about what social studies concepts are important in your questions. So maybe you're thinking about war or conflict. Look through the standards and see what kinds of concepts you think are embedded in your questions. Then you are going to come up with 3 primary, 3 secondary, and 2 young adult resources that can help you answer your inquiry questions. So all you're doing here is saying what they are, doing the APA citation of them, describing what them, and telling you why they are reliable or useful sources for your inquiry questions. All right, so that's step 2, kind of gathering your resources. So see, we're kind of following that same C3 step. We're developing questions for ourselves, we're gathering resources, and then you're going to analyze those resources, and you might even have to do more than the minimum requirements, and you're going to write up a paper that answers at least 3 of the questions that you identified. And the paper is going to look like a normal paper, but it's going to follow this organization that I have here. So in these parts here, you are following the template. But down here, you're just writing a normal paper. The paper does need to be an APA style. I'm not concerned with page length as much as I am of these are well-developed paragraphs. So it says that this section should be 3 well-developed paragraphs. And the reason I'm only having you write about 3 of those questions is because one of your questions you just might not find a lot of information on, or it might be a little trickier to find good resources for. So you only have to pick 3 of those questions to write about. All of this is due, I believe, let's go back to that schedule. Course info, course schedule. All of this is due on October 5th, okay? So that's right before we go on fall break. You're going to upload this. You're also going to upload a 5 to 10 minute video presentation of yourself. You can use what I'm using, which is Screencast-O-Matic. You can use any format that you're comfortable with, and I'll put up a rubric for that as well, but that's how you're going to present your topic. All right, everybody, I've checked all these things off my list that I wanted to talk to you about, but please make sure that you're reaching out to me with any questions you have. Like I said, everybody's doing a fantastic job on Blackboard. I'm really enjoying